Hi there, Tiktakers! Welcome to a new video. Today we bring you a list of the most iconic killers in horror movies. Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, or Leatherface. Don't forget to leave in the comments which one is the best movie killer for you. We will be rating you. Let's watch the video. Jason Voorhees is the main villain in the Friday the 13th saga. 12 installments so far, it is one of the most famous horror series of all times. The first movie was released in 1980. Son of Elias and Pamela Voorhees, he was born on June 13, 1946 and was raised by his mom. When he was 11, he went to the Crystal Lake camp located in the Massachusetts and New York area, where his mom worked as a cook. Jason suffered from bullying constantly. Other boys would make fun of his mental disabilities due to his hydrocephalus. They hurt him both physically and mentally. This bullying was so intense that they chased Jason until the lake once. Unluckily, he fell in the water, and since he couldn't swim, he drowned. The camp carers weren't paying attention and ignored Jason's cries for help. They were more into their parties than into doing their job. Jason's mom decided to take revenge, starting the Crystal Lake Massacre, later on known as Camp Blood. Pamela Voorhees is killed by the only survivor of the camp massacre. Jason, who had actually survived and hidden in the forest, sees her mother's death and goes crazy. Since that moment, he swears he will complete his mom's revenge and kill anyone who would dare to enter Crystal Lake. 5 years later, a man decides not to listen to the warnings and opens a new training camp for young people looking for a summer job as counselors. At that point, the rumor that Jason had been seen alive in the surroundings and had attacked people to survive was spread. Again, a man covering his face with a pillowcase enters the camp and kills all the students one by one without any pity or compassion. From that moment on, Jason will cover his face with an ice hockey mask. As weapons, he has used everything: knives, harpoons, axes. But his main weapon is his machete. Nobody can escape it. In 2003, a crossover with the saga Nightmare in Elm Street was made, mixing Jason with the villain Freddy Krueger. This movie is the closure of both original sagas. However, in 2009, they released a reboot of the franchise, respecting the original movie and advancing from it. Jason's character was only supposed to be on the first Friday the 13th. The idea was to start in a franchise with a different villain each time. But the plan changed after the movie's great success, and Voorhees became the recurrent villain. Throughout the years, Jason has gone through several transformations, from a deformed assassin to a zombie with a superhuman strength. He has even been frozen cryogenically and has woken up 400 years later in a spaceship. There is also a TV series from the late 80s, several video games, and some comics. There is no doubt that Jason hasn't accomplished his revenge yet, and his thirst for blood hasn't been satisfied. Be careful if you go camping. His whisper is the last thing you hear before dying.
Leatherface is the main villain of the famous horror franchise The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was created by screenwriter Kim Henkel and director Tobe Hooper, and appeared for the first time in the film of the same name in 1974. Jedediah Jed Sawyer, Jackson Sawyer, or Thomas Hewitt is known for making masks with the skin of his victims that served to hide his deformity. His life story, childhood traumas, and cannibalistic nature vary depending on whether it is the original film or its remakes. A member of the dysfunctional Sawyer family, his siblings ran a desolate gas station in Texas that victims passed through before reaching the family home. The Sawyers capture young people who bump into them, grill them, and serve them on the table. He is a tall, stocky, and very resistant man who expresses himself through gestures and shouts. Following family orders, with his mythical chainsaw, he's in charge of killing teenagers. cutting them up and storing them for his brother to cook them later. He also uses the bones to make furniture. With some mental retardation, he's under the control of his family. He's afraid of them and does practically everything they tell him. After suffering a childhood full of abuse and humiliation, and unlike other killers in film series, Leatherface is not sadistic in nature. He doesn't enjoy watching his victims die. He does it on impulse and almost always under orders. He's simply a child locked in the body of a bloodthirsty monster. In the 2003 remake, trying to make the character more terrifying, Leatherface acquires more personality and decides to kill on his own. In this film, one more member of the family appears, Jed's youngest daughter, who has been taken from her mother's arms, a previous victim of Leatherface. In the original version, there were only 3 masks, the killing mask and 2 women's masks, one of an old lady and another one of a younger woman. According to the director himself, the masks are changed according to the personality he adopts at that moment of the day. The character is largely based on Wisconsin serial killer Ed Gein, who in real life also made human skin masks with the faces of his victims, and furniture and crockery with bones. In addition, great directors such as Hitchcock and Psycho and Jonathan Demme were inspired by this killer to create Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. They were also based on Alexander Sonnebeen, a Scotsman who committed mass murders during the reign of James VI of Scotland, who was accused of incest and cannibalism. The horror saga has 7 films to date, plus a prequel to the original 1974 film, which is based on the protagonist's childhood and premiered in October 2017. Leatherface first appeared in the 1983 video game The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, created by Wizard Video for the Atari 2600. He's also a downloadable character for the fighting video game Mortal Kombat X. Leatherface has still a long way to go. The rumbling sound of his chainsaw that kills his victims still echoes in her nightmares.
Frederick Charles Krueger, better known as Freddy Krueger, is the main villain in the saga A Nightmare on Elm Street, created by the movie director Wes Craven. The origins of the character go back to a Christmas day in the beginning of the 40s. A young nun called Mary Helena, whose real name was Amanda Krueger, was locked unintentionally in the Division of Lunatic Criminals of the psychiatric hospital Westin Hills. There, she was tortured and raped by other 100 patients. She got pregnant and was on the brink of death. Months later, Freddy was born, and his mom gave him up for adoption. Mr. Underwood took him, an abusive alcoholic who mistreated him all the time. With time, Freddy started to develop a psychopath behavior and showed it by killing little animals. During his last years as a teenager, Freddy started to get used to the abuse he suffered, so much that he started relating it to pleasure. He created his own philosophy and called it the secret of pain. It consisted in believing that he couldn't make other people feel that until he himself knew how to enjoy it. Following this belief, Freddy started to mutilate himself until he was able to control the pain completely. And as an initial right for this philosophy, he killed his stepfather. As an adult, Freddy married a woman called Loretta, with whom he had a daughter, Catherine. The family lived in what was Fred's home during his childhood, in the number 1420 on Elm Street. Catherine was still a little girl when kids in the neighborhood started to disappear and be found dead. Soon after, Loretta finds out that Freddy had a secret room in the basement where he hid different torture tools, newspaper clippings, and versions of what would be his famous glove in the future. When Freddy finds out that she knows, even though she tells him she won't tell anyone, he kills her in front of their own daughter. As all of this was happening, Freddy was working at the local power plant. In its boiler room, he had captured and killed more than 20 kids. The police couldn't solve the case, and Krueger earned the nickname the Springwood Slasher. In 1966, Freddy was arrested for the murders of the missing kids, and Catherine was adopted by the Borrocks. This family left the town and their records were erased. Since the search warrant wasn't signed properly, all evidences were discarded and Krueger was set free in 1968. After the trial, Freddy's mother hanged herself in the same tower where she had been raped. That same night, parents in the neighborhood decided to take the law into their own hands. They followed Krueger to the boiler room, made a gasoline trail to its entrance, and they burned him alive. While the flames were taking over the room, 3 dream demons appeared. These demons were wandering the earth looking for a cruel and vicious soul to join, to make dreams come true. Freddy accepted this union in order to live for eternity in the world of dreams. From that moment on, Freddy told himself he would kill all the sons and daughters of the people who had burned him alive, getting into their nightmares while they sleep. This character has appeared in 7 movies of the saga and also in a crossover with the franchise Friday the 13th in Freddy vs. Jason. In 2010, they released a remake of the first movie. His famous knife's glove was created to symbolize the claws of a predator, and his legendary red and green sweater had this color since they are the 2 colors that have the greatest impact in the human retina. The character could come back to the big screen. There have been rumors for some years about a possible sequel of the 2010 movie. Whether it's happening or not, we are sure that Freddy will keep scaring us, getting into our houses while we sleep, watching us in our deepest dreams. We're gonna tell you about Michael Myers' life, the villain in the Halloween movie saga created by John Carpenter in 1978 and whose 11th movie is coming out soon. This famous character has gone through 3 different versions. In Carpenter's original version, he's a psychopathic assassin. There is no logical explanation behind his actions apart from a natural and infinite meanness. In the original movie in 1978, Michael Myers was born on October 19, 1957. He is the son of Donald and Edith Myers, and he has 2 sisters. Due to the amount of time he spent alone, he started hearing voices that only he could hear and that incited him to kill. In October 31, 1963, when Michael was 6 years old, he saw his sister and her boyfriend kissing while his grandma, Doris, was taking care of them. Michael went across the road dressed up as a clown, entered the house through the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and waited until her sister's boyfriend had left the house. He went upstairs, walked to her sister's room, and stabbed her 17 times until she died. Michael tried to run away, but he was discovered by his parents. Because of this crime, he is sent to the Smiths Grove Sanitarium, a psychiatric hospital, where he stayed for 15 years. On October 30, 1978, after his parents' death, Michael runs away and goes back to his house to kill his sister Lori and finish what he had started. His psychopathy is a mystery for everyone, including his psychiatrist, Dr. Loomis, who describes him using sentences as pure evil or lacking any kind of understanding, reason, and sense of life and death, of good and bad. He describes his eyes as the devil's eyes. His incredible physical skills are also inexplicable. He can survive 6 gunshots, direct shots to his eyes, or serious burns. The giant Michael Myers hides his face behind an iconic white mask. The mask used in the original installment of Halloween was actually a mask from Captain Kirk in Star Trek, with the eyes cut out and painted in white. In the beginning, they were gonna use the mask with the face of a clown. From the movie Halloween 4, the explanations about Michael's origins started turning darker and more supernatural. A curse explains in a supernatural way Michael's behavior, linked to black magic and Celtic rituals. Michael is a human being with supernatural skills, essentially evil and indestructible, who keeps inside an evil spirit comparable to that of the devil himself. This is explained through the implication of a Celtic cult. Myers has a runic symbol of evil tattooed on his arm, related to the Curse of Thorn, a pagan ritual that Druids used to do during All Saints' Eve, Halloween. This ritual aims to finish off all the members of the lineage, hence Michael's obsession with killing all his family. In Rob Zombie's version, who directed the remakes of the saga from 2007 onwards, the origins of Michael as an assassin has more psychological and social explanations. Michael comes from a dysfunctional family. His mother is a stripper and a prostitute, his stepfather an alcoholic, and he abuses his sister. Michael has a promiscuous and negligent sister that doesn't take him out trick-or-treating in Halloween. On top of all this, other kids bully him at school. Myers shows classical psychopath behaviors, such as torturing small animals, a weird obsession with his mother, and violent behaviors. His first victim is one of the bullies that upset him at school. He kills him in the woods with a branch. Behind his white mask, his mechanic's overalls, and his kitchen knife, with 11 movies behind his back, Michael Myers has turned into one of the most iconic murderers in the history of cinema. This October 31st, be very careful. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!